Welcome back to another episode of Adeptus Paternus. I have with me my good friend Arthur and local homunculus expert that we have on hand for talking about Drukhari, which is the subject matter of this episode. How you doing, Arthur?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing just dandy. I don't know if that is necessarily the right mood to be in when discussing Drukhari, but we'll see how it goes.
Any mood's the right mood to discuss Drukhari in. You just have to have an open mind about it.
Yeah, it's all a matter of perspective, right?
Exactly.
So we're going to talk about the new detachment that you got. Now, you actually have 2 index detachments.
Yes. The Sky Splinter and now the new one, Reaper's Wager.
And then there was the Real Space Raiders.
Well, Real Space Raiders was the original one.
The original.
The original, which was essentially gave us nothing. It was so bland that they actually said, you know what, fine. You're not getting a codex for a hot minute, so here, have something decent. And we got Sky Splinter. And 9 times out of 10, most people are running Sky Splinter. You'll see someone every now and then running Real Space, but Sky Splinter is by far better than Real Space.
Yeah, so we will be comparing this to Sky Splinter then.
We'll be comparing it to Sky Splinter and actually comparing it to Real Space.
Sure.
Because the question comes, like, if I want an alternative to Sky Splinter, why not just fall back to Real Space?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what makes me want to choose this one over Real Space?
Got it. Aside from the fluff, because it is fluffy.
Aside from the fluff, yes. Oh, it's super fluffy.
This one, I think of all the ones that I've seen, has fluff that I like. It's not just, oh, this is the X detachment. I mean, in a sense, it is the X detachment in that it's, the detachment where Drukhari can bring a bunch of clowns, but there's a story behind it. It's not just because.
Yeah, and the story makes so much sense. It's a story that's like, oh, look, these 2 arrogant elves that think themselves so much above everybody else that they're playing a game in the middle of a war.
I mean, didn't they do that in Lord of the Rings, Legolas and Gimli?
Exactly.
All right, well, let's get into it. Reaper's Wager. It's already in the name. You can tell a lot. The detachment rule is callous competition. At the start of the battle, Drukhari units from your army are winning the wager. Each time a Drukhari unit from your army destroys an enemy unit, they're winning the wager. Each time a Harlequins unit from your army destroys an enemy unit, Harlequins are winning the wager. While Drukhari units from your army are winning the wager, Harlequin units are losing the wager, and vice versa. It is a zero-sum game. Each time a Drukhari or Harlequins model from your army makes an attack, if that model's unit is losing the wager, reroll a hit roll of 1 and reroll a wound roll of 1. And obviously, to make this work, you're allowed to bring, in a 2,000-point game, up to 1,000 points of clowns. So half and half.
Yeah. It's the wording. I understand why they did it this way because it is very weird, but once you understand it, it's simple.
Yeah.
It's whoever kills a unit, the other one gets the buff.
Yep.
And it's this constant back and forth, which in itself isn't that great. It's an okay rule, but it gets a little better when you remember that technically Drukhari still have power from pain.
Right.
So you already have your regular units, like, say, for example, Scourge, that you can already give them the full rerolls to hit. If they're losing the wager, they now also have reroll 1s to wound.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes their potentiality go up a lot. Or someone like Drazar can suddenly be useful in this detachment. So even though the rule itself isn't as impressive or as killy as Sky Splinter, it opens up more doors for other units.
Yeah, it definitely. So the buff of reroll hits of reroll 1s, just is how I will refer to it from now on, is in and of itself an extremely good buff. My reference point is always Necrons. one of the main reasons to run the Silent King, who costs 420 points, is because he has a 6-inch aura of reroll 1s. And part of the reason why people are so excited about Sky Splinter, not Sky Splinter, Star Shatter, is because you get to have a second aura like that. So in and of itself, reroll 1s can be very, very good. But yeah, this is super janky, and you have to have a galaxy brain to, do your activations in the correct order and to get the efficiencies so that you're not just overcommitting can be tricky, to say the least.
Yes, but there is a way that you can kind of gain it a little.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when we look at the enhancements, there's one that kind of helps with that. But the main thing is, you don't run 1,000 points of Harlequins.
Sure.
You run maybe 500. So you run majority Drukhari, and if you can do proper staging and proper preparing, you can pick off units and then just basically play around it. Like, I was playing Knights the other day, and Knights that are a low count army, I was able to fairly reliably control who was winning the wager.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can do that, then essentially, if you can get 80% of the time the units that you want to have reroll 1s where they have it, that's a big army buff.
Yeah. Or, what I've heard some other people saying, which I agree with, is you can play this and just ignore the detachment roll. Because the enhancements... Well, that's what a lot of people do with... not ignore, but you don't keep it in mind. Like with real Space Raiders. The rule is nothing. It's you get more pain tokens.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't take it into consideration when building the lists. And you play real Space Raider for the stratagems.
Mm-hmm.
Because it has the -1 to wound that you can put on Talos, which is huge. Or the Fire and Fade.
Right.
So that's how people would play it. You'd see the blobs of 6 Talos and stuff like that. So with this one, as we're going to see further on, you can play and ignore this, or use it when you get the opportunity and not constantly be kind of micromanaging to see who gets the buff. Just kind of take advantage of the buff when it's there. Sure.
I mean, I can see that, but I also think that it depends. I mean, if you can do it against Knights, then you can almost certainly do it against like an MSU list, and being able to manage that. I mean, you've only done a couple practice games. Nobody can have done more than a few practice games at this point. But I think like if you were to get really experienced with this, you could probably the ceiling on this I feel like is pretty high.
The ceiling does look pretty high, but the issue I see with this is while you could make it work, the stress from a competitive scenario, for example, would make it too much. You know what I mean? Like, even if you had it down to a T, just adding in the factor of 1, I am timed. 2, I am playing against veterans. 3, I'm playing, LVO.
Sure.
You'd have to be seriously honed in to make this work as efficiently.
Yeah.
Now, am I going to try? Yes.
Yeah.
Is it going to work? I don't know.
And I think one more asterisk that should be considered here is that Harlequins are part of the Craftworld Eldar Codex, which will be coming out soon, and therefore their data sheets could change. And if their data sheets get like better, then that could make this better.
Yes, I considered that, but I don't know how much they're going to change them.
No, you can't plan around it.
No. So I'm just playing it as is, and even as is, the being able to bring Harlequins and actually buff them in this detachment makes a huge difference, because even before you'd see people run the occasional Death Jester or Void Weaver for the Battle Shock. But now that you can actually give them enhancements and stratagems, there's a lot of fun stuff that you can do with this.
Yep. Well, let's get into them.
Sure. Want to start with the enhancements?
That is the way. Number 1, Arch Raider for 15 points. This can go on either a Harlequins or Drukhari model. In the declare battle formation step, if the bear starts the battle embarked within a dedicated transport, that dedicated transport has the Scout's 9-inch ability.
I love this one so much, especially with the fact that the Beastmaster went up in cost.
Mm-hmm.
I can do this with something much bigger. You could
Yeah.
grab, like, if you want to do something like suicidey and silly, you could grab a 45-point succubus, put her in the raider, and then fill the raider with, I don't know, 10 witches with her, or 10 racks. Heck, you could make 2 units of racks, put one of them with a homunculus, so that they have the 4+, or you could put the whole 10-man, put them in the raider, scout the raider, and now you have a wall of potentially 10 racks with a 4+ Fionopane at the front line at the beginning of the game.
That is very
Also,
useful against some armies. I mean, world eaters, for example.
yes, it gives you the option to run a cheaper screen that isn't the Beastmaster.
Mm-hmm.
Because aside from the cost, also actually getting the Beastmaster model is next to impossible. So it's, yeah, I mean, you've seen mine. Mine are kit bashed.
They're lovely.
Thanks. But it's a great alternative. And not only a great alternative, it's just a better option in so many ways, because you could put, again, take the Raider. You could take the Raider and put Drazar with a unit of 5 Incubi and put a random unit that has the buff, and you have Drazar on the front lines. Or an Archon with 10 Incubi in a Raider, scouting up the field.
I think that is what really makes it fantastic, is that the character with the enhancement does not actually have to be leading anything.
Yeah.
And so therefore, this is just a party bus of whatever you want to fill.
Yeah. Like the only limitation being the dedicated transport, because if not, you could do it
Sure.
with Tantalus, and that would be disgusting.
That would be, I mean, I don't know that you necessarily want to do that anyway. I mean, you do want to be staging something where you can hide it, most likely.
Yes, but if I show up to a casual game, I would love to be able to scout a Tantalus 9 and see the fear in my opponent's face.
I mean, I think it would be a sickened fascination.
Yes.
All
Very
right.
much so.
Next one, Webway Walker. Unless you have more to say about the last one.
No, it's a very versatile enhancement that gives a lot of play, and the fact that you can put it on either Harlequins or Drukhari, and it doesn't depend on the person leading a unit, makes it great. Because again, you could put it on a Death Jester, put him in a Starweaver,
yeah,
push him out. Yeah.
And it's only 15 points, so I think you take it every list.
This is, for me, this is an auto-include.
Yeah. All right, Webway Walker, another 15.1. I like cheap enhancements. Harlequins or Drukhari model, again, models in the Bears unit have the Deep Strike ability. And then on top of that, if the Bears unit is set up in the battlefield using Deep Strike, and that unit is currently losing the wager, you can reroll charges, which is cute. But 15 points just for Deep Strike is already useful.
Yeah. This one's a little more situational.
Right.
Because, for example, most Drukhari stuff already has Deep Strike.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't, like, you could maybe put it on, I don't know, a Starweaver, and Deep Strike a Starweaver. Well, you couldn't put it on the Starweaver. You'd have to put it on the unit, sorry.
Right.
So, you'd have to, like, Deep Strike a unit of, I don't know, maybe an Archon with 5 Incubi, which could work as a nice little threat potential. You could use it more for scoring. I don't know if I'd use it in an offensive capacity, just because it's spending points to put a character with probably leading a unit into Deep Strike.
Mm-hmm.
I used it the other day, and I used it with the Archon, and I put it on my Warlord so that I could stage the Lord of Deceit in the background and kind of force the +1 CP on the knights and just kind of hamper what they were doing.
Which is huge, especially because the boogeyman in the meta right now, as of time of recording, is Star Shatter Necrons, and part of it is because all 6 strats are ridiculously good, and if you can get a Vectora within range of what they want to be spending CP on, that's fantastic.
That's what I mean. It's a more tactical use. I wouldn't use this for like
No.
for throwing like a unit that wants to attack. No, I'd use it more of a I'm going to stage and I'm going to mess with my opponent.
Well, I mean, if you have something that like maybe you want to use as a rapid ingress threat, but you have so many sneaky ways of getting around, and you go super fast anyway. Like it's not as like necessary as I have a bunch of Terminators, and the only way that I'm ever going to get them into combat is rapid ingress.
Exactly. That's what I mean. This is a situational. From what I'm seeing is, if I have the points left over, I'd absolutely put it on someone because it just gives me an extra tool.
Sure.
But if I can't take it, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, next one, Reaper's Cowl, 25 points. Now this one is only for Harlequins.
Mm-hmm.
Models in the Bears unit have stealth and infiltrators.
This one, the only problem I have with it is the point cost. It's too expensive.
Well, that and there's a character tax. I mean,
well,
the best infiltrators are the cheap infiltrators.
Yeah. I mean, you could also... this one is... I haven't found a use for this one. I can think of something stupid and silly, which is a 12 blob of Quins with a Troop Master infiltrated.
Sure.
But that is an expensive piece to throw in an infiltrate.
Exactly.
You could put it on a Death Jester.
I mean, that's not the worst idea.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it does make him ever so harder to kill, just having the stealth on top of the lone op. But it is 25 points.
Yeah. That's the biggest issue for me, that it's 25. I understand why they made it Harlequins, because if I could infiltrate Incubi,
right,
that would not make people happy. So it's cheeky. There's probably a specific use for it, but I don't see it yet, and it's too expensive.
Yeah,
like.
Unless, I mean, I could see a solo character themselves, but honestly, so there are 2 reasons to infiltrate. One is, okay, I guess 3. One would be to stage for area denial. Another would be to prevent your opponent from infiltrating, and then the third is kind of related to the second, which is prevent scout moves. Now, if you're preventing scout moves, the prime example, of course, is World Eaters. Whatever is doing that job is dead turn 1, so it has to be cheap. If you're preventing their infiltration, it's like the use out of it is not necessarily worth whatever this is going to cost. And then the first example of staging for like area denial or established locus, well, you can do that with whatever dedicated transport you scouted 9 inches to stage behind the ruin in the middle.
Or even let's go the points route. Let's say we took a single character. The cheapest Quinn character is the Troop Master. That's 25, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 55.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think there's a character that cheap in the game, but I was gonna let you figure that one out.
55 points and then 25 points extra for the enhancement, right? That's more expensive than a unit of mandrakes.
Right, exactly.
And it's a single model. I might as well just run another unit of mandrakes.
Yep, 100%. No, I'm sure you would take 4 mandrakes if you could, but
actually, with the points increased,
With the points increase, maybe not. Yeah.
I'm stretching 2.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 hurts.
Yeah. I mean, every Scout's got it too. I'm glad that they didn't touch my flayed ones.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're still 60 points.
Oh, that's good. That's good. No, we got the Scary text, but we can get into that at some other point.
I know. The Scary versus Josh Roberts conversation. Yeah. Anyway. Last one, Conductor of Torment for 20 points. And this one is only for Drukhari. In your command phase, you can do one of the following. If your Drukhari units are losing the wager, you gain a pain token, and you are now winning the wager. If Drukhari is winning the wager, you can discard a pain token, and now Harlequins are winning the wager.
Yeah, this is the one I had mentioned at the beginning that lets you kind of mitigate the decision-making of who's winning and who's losing.
Right.
Because with this, whoever's winning or losing, you can actively affect and change it.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, if you're going to try to play the mind games of seeing who's winning and losing, you want to make sure that you end on a Quinn win, so that you begin the turn with an essentially a free token. Now, that's a lot of micromanagement and overthinking, but if you can do it, it's something that at least when I was playing my other game that I kept in the back of my mind. It's like, oh, if I do this, I can get this next turn. But it gives the complicated rule some breathing room.
Yeah. I think it does it in a good way, too.
Yeah. It's fluffy, it makes sense, and it's not taxing. The only problem is you have to have someone on the floor. Like, you can't have them in deep strike and you can't have them in a boat.
You can have them in deep strike. But
you can have them in deep strike?
Yes. You are allowed to use abilities when you are in deep strike or reserves. You cannot do it when they're in a transport, because unless the rule specifically states, even if they're in a transport, and there are some rules like that, then you can do it as long as it doesn't say while the bearer is on the battlefield. So because this doesn't say anything about the battlefield, you can do it in reserves.
You're right. I mean, I still wouldn't put whatever unit has it in reserves if it's not in a transport. Because if you're putting this on a Drukhari model, it would either be a Succubus, a Haemonculus, or a Archon.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you could put it on a Beastmaster, but why the hell would you do that?
But it's somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, and none of those have Deep Strike, and strategic reserving them is not worth it. So what you could potentially do with something like this is you put it on an Archon that's leading a Court of the Archon with some guns, and you have a sort of mid-range threat on the board because it has -1 to wound, and you can kind of use that as a push on the ground while keeping this alive, because that model tends to stay alive with that blob around it.
I know.
I bet you do.
And the whole room knows when he dies, because Arthur lets out a howl of anguish.
It's not a howl.
From the depths of your soul, what's left of it.
It makes the game fun.
It does. It does. We're both staring at the dice, just looking for that single pip.
That single one.
That single one. For those of you who don't know, the Archon has a 2-up save until he doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I spiked that save once against Scarbrand and made 13 saves in a row.
I think there was a game against me where you made like 20 in a row, and then he finally died.
I love doing that. It really is great. But yeah, the Conductor of Torment, I feel, kind of helps mitigate the thinking a little.
Sure.
20 points is a bit costly. You don't have to run it. I like running it because it helps. And it's going on a unit that I was planning on running anyways, and it's a unit that's not going to die turn 1. Unless I do something really dumb.
Well, don't do that. I think that... I suspect the better use of this is... Because I can't imagine that there's a time where you're like, oh, I really need to get my reroll ones on Harlequins first thing. So most of the time, I think you're just going to be aiming to end with killing something with Harlequins so that you can get that pain token.
Absolutely.
And I mean, if you get 2 pain tokens out of it, I think that's worth 20 points.
You know, because the pain token economy is still a thing.
Yep.
We're still limited on pain tokens, so the fact that I can potentially get an extra one is pure money.
Yep, very good.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to these strats.
Yeah, and this is where this detachment starts to call attention.
Yeah. Starting with the first one, Malicious Frenzy. Shooting or fight phase, Drukhari or Harlequins, lethal or sustained 1.
And that's
so good.
That is so good.
For 1 CP.
And for 1 CP, and you can do it, if you have the CP, you can do it twice in a turn.
This is true.
Because you can do it in shooting and in fighting.
Yep.
And I don't know who I was talking to yesterday, but I'll put the same idea in your head. Lilith with lethal.
Oh, God.
And full rerolls.
Oh, God. That's scary. That is genuinely scary.
Like, if you give her a pain token, she has full rerolls. She has the extra AP. If she's leading a unit, she has more extra AP. So that is hitting anywhere from 8 to 12 on sustained hits 2, lethal AP 4.
Yeah. That's when, because I mean, Lilith has always been one of the things, like, if she gets into the right target, you know, they're shredded.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, she is always the right, it had, you know, big asterisk on right target.
Yeah. I mean, she could get a slightly better target in Sky Splinter because of Lance.
Yeah, but then it's still you're wounding on like 5s realistically. But now, right. I mean, you know, okay, yeah, it's only damage 1, but if you're going, okay, let's say you're fishing for your 6s. I mean, let's say, you know, she kills a rhino by herself now, probably.
Probably she could.
Probably she could. Like, it wouldn't be shocking to anyone if she did. Whereas before it would have been, well, that was the craziest thing I ever saw. I mean,
she'd kill it because she'd also have now the witches that all are 30 attacks with lethal.
Right. I mean, certainly she by herself is, yeah, that's nuts. And there's the thing about this is that, I mean, either one of these is good. Sustained hits is often better, but then being able to pick what you want when you want it is so good for 1 CP.
I mean, and like, again, for example, in some cases, lethal is better. I was fighting into an Atropos with Talos.
Yeah.
I went lethal. That was 3 damage a pop that went through. It chewed through a knight. 2 Talos chewed through a knight.
Yeah.
Now, the knight was already wounded, but still, I had never seen a Talos kill a knight.
It would not do that without the lethal hits. Absolutely not.
And remember what I told you before about the strats and the enhancements opening new paths for other units that are normally kind of overlooked?
Mm-hmm.
Lethal hits or sustained on Drazar.
Yeah.
Who already has the +1 a wound.
Right.
Plus leading a full unit of Incubi. Or you could put it on the Archon with his full unit as well. But a more interesting thought are the Hellions. Because the Hellions already have a built-in sustained.
Mm-hmm.
And their weapons are damage 2. But they're low strength. But suddenly a unit of 10 Hellions that do, I think they do 2 or 3 attacks, I'd have to double check, with lethal and sustained? That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, I really like the idea of Drazar with, you know, getting the sustain. I guess it depends, but because either way, you know, he has a bunch of stuff going on, interacting with the wounding. The +1 to wound. He's got
and the dev wounds.
the dev wounds and the twin linked. So the lethal, but I could definitely see sustained and fishing, and being able to then, as you mentioned earlier, get him further up early on. There are definitely, with the precision, there are cases where he could be very scary to people.
You could send him on a suicide snipe mission and kill off an important character if you wanted to.
Absolutely. I mean, wraiths and technomancers are coming back. So
you could, it doesn't even have to be him. You could actually send a succubus.
Right.
Because the succubus now, theoretically, I haven't been able to try it, is not horrible. Because the succubus has an inbuilt sustained hits when it's leading a unit. So suddenly, you have a succubus with a pain token with full rerolls of sustained hits 1, and you can give her lethal.
Yeah. There isn't
like a mini Lilith.
Right. There isn't anything in the book that gives, crit 5s, right?
No.
Yeah, that's when things get wonky. But
well, there are the not crits on hits, but there are the anti-vehicle weapons.
Sure. And that's when you really want sustain too. I could definitely see if you're going up against like a high toughness vehicle and you have your haywire and you're just like, I just need as many of these shots as possible. And you go with the sustained hits 1. Because if you have the extra hits from the sustained, you're fishing for that maybe. Maybe not you're fishing. You don't fish for sustained, but like you get lucky, you get some sustained. Because they're 3 shots each, right? From the...
2 shots.
2 shots, so total of 8.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're statistically likely to pick up at least
3 wounds each.
Right. That's right. That's where the 3 is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
If you really need to get to a vehicle, that's a perfectly good shooting target for the sustained, and especially
sustained on dark lances.
True.
And
anyway,
the thing is, because you can take Harlequins, you can take the haywire bikes.
Oh,
3s.
that is nice. I forgot that
you can give.
Yeah,
you can give them the sustained or the lethal.
The possibilities are endless. It's just such a good strat.
Or again, give it to the Talos that has twin linked on the haywire.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. There's
I could talk about this strat alone all day.
Basically nobody says no thanks.
Exactly. This is a strat that you will be using at least once a turn.
Probably. But we'll have to see, because there might be some other ones that provide some competition, though it's hard to see how.
Well, some of them are really good, though.
Yeah.
You'll see.
All right, next one, Fateful Roll, and that is LE, not LL, though that might also be the case depending on the situation.
Probably, yeah.
So this is a fight phase. It's either Drukhari or Harlequins, and it's basically a fight on death for 1 CP, and it's on a 3-up if the unit is losing the wager, on a 4-up for if they're winning the wager.
Yeah, the 3 or the 4 is cheeky. If you can get it, great. But again, giving Drukhari and Harlequins a fight on death is nasty.
It is nasty. Yes.
That tends to be our biggest weakness, that we don't get to punch back.
Mm-hmm.
But if I give, for example, I don't know, let's say you charge into Unit A and then you consolidate into Lilith and you kill her unit to avoid my fights first.
Right. Pile into her.
Pile into her, yeah. You pile into her, you avoid my fights first, you wipe the unit because they are paper thin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay. I still get to fight. And now you have to deal with 30 attacks plus Lilith.
Yep. It's...
Well, maybe less than 30 because you have to roll a 4+, but...
Sure. Obviously, I suspect most of the game, it's going to be the case where, Drukhari are winning the wager. But even so, for a unit like that, I would pay the CP for the fight on death on a 4-up.
Yeah. Or even on a unit of Quins.
Yeah.
If you want to run a 10 or a 12 blob of Quins that die and come back, if you charged, for example, and you got interrupted with the fights first, you still have the +1 to wound and the
Mm-hmm.
dev wounds.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
true.
it helps mitigate the glass cannonness of the units.
Yeah, I remember talking to Clint about his Black Templars, and discussing matchups for teams events, and I'd say, "How do you feel about this melee matchup? About X unit." He's like, "It's okay. I'll just fight on death."
Yeah,
And
like
yeah,
the reason Clint outwins me in combat most times has been because of the fight on death. Because I can like grab one of his blobs and just surround it and clean it up. But then he fights on death and he cleans up the other ones. Like I can't deal with the fight on death.
right.
So giving fight on death to something like Drukhari
Yeah,
is scary. A couple units of Incubi coming back is scary.
yeah. So
Yeah.
what's funny is the timing of this. There's a weird interaction that you could technically exploit. So this is just the fight phase after an enemy unit has selected its targets, meaning that that happens at that. So first that happens, and then there's actually, it doesn't say just after you can fight. So technically, you can see how many of your models are going to be fighting on death, and if it's enough and worth it, you can use Malicious Frenzy and buff them.
I was thinking that. Yeah. You could use Malicious and also give him a pain token.
Yeah, exactly. And just,
And now you have. Yeah.
Because Malicious Frenzy just says shooting phase or fight phase, meaning it can be whenever as long as it's not within sort of like the middle of another rule, but in this case it would be between rules. It's after the enemy has selected its targets, and it is before it's after they've finished making their attacks, but then before they've been it works, and that's nasty. That's super nasty.
Because again, you can put it on big blobs. This actually kind of incentivates you to run big blobs a little and not go full MSU. You could still go full MSU, but if you wanted to take advantage of the fateful roll, you'd probably want to run 10 mans on something, like a 10 man of Incubi, for example.
Yeah.
And oh god, that's just nasty.
And
2 CP to fight on death with lethal or sustained and full rerolls.
I mean it's expensive, but if it's like the best chance that you have at killing their damage dealer, it's worth it.
Totally. It's basically 2 CP to try to turn the tide of battle.
Yep.
Essentially.
Yep. All right. Now moving on to Murderer's Circus. This is the fight phase.
I love the names.
Yeah, they are fun. This is the fight phase after an enemy unit has selected its targets. This is either Drukhari or Quins, and just they're -1 to be hit. Perfectly reasonable. It's a shame it wasn't also the shooting phase. But you take what you can get.
It's situational. You might use it if you need. It's okay. It's a nice tool in the toolkit to have in an emergency.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you're trying to hold a point, a primary, and the thing that they've sent at you is like questionably lethal, especially if it hits on like 3s or 4s. I mean, if it hits on 4s in melee and you're like, I just really don't want that unit to die, and now you're hitting on 5s, cool. Think about Terminators. They hit on 4s with their Thunderhammers, so if you can get that to 5s, they're probably not doing very much.
A good scenario is, for example, the Court of the Archon.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big blob, and that blob already innately has -1 a wound.
Right. Yeah.
So if you go into the fight phase and they're fighting you can give them that -1 to get hit with that +1, -1 to get wounded to make the unit a lot less killable.
Absolutely.
So it's situational.
It's a good thing to have. Again, it'd be nice with the shooting too, but whatever.
You take what you can. I think if you gave us -1 in shooting here, people would get angry.
I don't think so. This is good stuff, but it's not like it's not broken. It's certainly
no, but I say jokingly because people like to.
Well, of course, everybody complains about elves.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, this is a good one. Shorten the odds.
Oof.
It's Drukhari or Harlequins. Advance, shoot, and charge. Fantastic.
This is disgusting.
It's so good.
For 1 CP.
For 1 CP.
Like, let me put a silly idea in your head here. You have that raider that's scouted. You advance it. Raiders auto advance 6. So turn 1, you're moving 29. And then you charge. And you've shot that singular dark lance, and then you charge into something, and you tank shock it.
Well, you can't. If you're going second, you'll have the CP.
If you're going second, you could do it, yeah. But I just think about a raider charging you, going second, charging into your back lines, and tank shocking you. And then if you kill the raider, it's full of incubi that are now in your backfield.
Yeah, that's pretty silly.
And even not that, like, again, this one has so much potential.
Yeah. I mean, you're already fast, and this just makes you super fast.
Yeah. Like, most of the stuff here doesn't shoot a lot, but you can use this not necessarily in a shooting fashion. You could use this, for example,
it's the advance and charge, yeah.
Yeah. Well, not the charge. It's the advance and shoot. Because, for example, you could advance Scourge and shoot,
yes.
and then scoot.
That is good. That's good.
Because it doesn't say you can. It says you can shoot your weapons, or scarier, you advance a group of 2 Talos, you shoot their weapons, and then you charge them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, every army is happy to get access to something like this. It is always nice when it's a strat as opposed to something like an enhancement, that you can just, when it's necessary. I mean, look, there are going to be times where it may not even be for purposes of killing anything. It is just, I need to get OC onto that point.
Yeah. Like, you could do it on a unit of, let's say you have a unit of not incubi, Cabalites. They jump out of a vehicle. They get that 3 extra buff to move. Essentially, from moving out of the vehicle, that's already they're moving 11 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the advance. That's a lot of movement in a single turn for a CP.
The thing is, what it often comes down to is about measuring threat ranges. When you tell your opponent, well, I can advance and charge with any of these things, they can't just pre-measure and say, well, I know I'm safe if I'm, whatever your movement is plus, 12, right?
Especially when a lot of threats can go through terrain.
Yeah. You have to assume when you're pre-measuring that your opponent is always going to roll a 6 on their advance and that they're going to roll above average on their charge. And that just means that you have to account. It just becomes so much harder to stage safely knowing that it could come from anywhere.
It kind of puts this threat of a chokehold on the opponent, which is very Drukhari.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. The only problem is it's competing with Malicious Frenzy.
Yeah. Yes. But that's why I think this is a detachment where you're gonna keep a CP in the bank. You're gonna play tactical and discard for extra CP because you're gonna want to have access to these things for when the right situation comes up that you can make a play that gets you a bunch of VP.
Yeah, you want to kind of go a little defensive turns 1 and 2 to kind of stage and score points, and then kind of try to mitigate the CP you're spending so that you can burst turns 3, 4, and 5.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. I don't think that any of these are things that you have to spend turns 1 and 2, which is great because then you can enter turn 3 and make that your go turn, and you have the CP to do everything that you want to do.
Which for me works great because turn 3 tends to already be my go turn.
Right. Yeah.
So it works great.
Yeah. Well, we can move on to the next one. Scintillating.
I could talk about shorten the odds as well for just so many potential with that one too.
Yeah. I know. All the really good ones are like that. But we don't really have a time limit, but eventually we have to go to sleep.
Yeah, eventually.
So moving on to Scintillating Tempo, another good name. This is one, yeah. Anyway, movement or charge phase, Drukhari or Harlequins, basically any situation in which you could be overwatched, enemy units cannot overwatch. And
you can turn off Overwatch.
You can turn off Overwatch.
And here's the thing. Because you can do it in movement phase and charge phase, if you have the CP, you could hypothetically turn off Overwatch on the turn for 2 different units. Because it lasts the turn.
Yeah, you're right. Until the end of the turn. That is very good.
So,
not just the phase.
Exactly. You could make 2 units not get overwatched, and then if you position your Lord of Deceit well, if they are going to overwatch, it's going to cost them 2 CP.
Mm-hmm.
And you could just completely shut down an opponent's defenses.
Yeah, they did word it in such a way so that you can't be a complete jerk about it, which is you can't, basically you're not allowed to force them to spend the CP to get nothing.
Yeah, you have to declare it before you're moving.
No, you can do it.
It's when the unit is selected.
So you're right. It's when it's selected. So you have to spend a CP not knowing whether or not they would have overwatched anyway.
Well, I mean, if you're looking at the field and you know how things are going, you know what units are going to get overwatched 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, if you're hopping in front of a Land Raider Redeemer, most likely that was the Overwatch.
Right. Or let's say your opponent's holding the midfield and you with a tank and you have a unit of Scourge. They want to jump out.
Mm-hmm.
Gee, I wonder who's going to get shot.
Yes, I have overwatched them many a time.
I am well aware. Being able to tell you no feels very good.
I think, yeah, for Scourges in particular, this is a huge buff because their range on their on the Haywire being 24 means that in order to shoot them, they have to get an Overwatch range.
Although with this, I wouldn't run them with Haywire. I'd run the bikes with Haywire or the Talos, and I'd run Scourge with Dark Lance.
Sure.
Because the Talos have better toughness and the bikes have a little more mobility for some stuff.
Yeah.
So you'd run them with Haywire and you'd run Scourge with Dark Lance so that you have a close range and a long range threat.
Sure. Makes sense.
But yeah, the problem with this strat brings us back to what I was telling you with Shorten the Odds and Malicious Frenzy. These 3 are 3 amazing strats. Now, this one you're not going to be using all the time.
No.
But having the CP to threaten your opponent with it is a great thing to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But again, you're going to be entering turn 3 probably with 4, maybe 5 CP. So...
assuming you haven't had to use any in turns 1 and 2.
Yeah. I mean, but you're not going to... You might use a CP reroll if you really needed to make an advance or something. But that's probably about it.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could end up using one of these if, depending on a mission that you get, like area denial or something that you have to kill and you want to make sure you kill, you would end up maybe using malicious or something.
But you should have... The thing is, when my experience playtesting Star Shatter, which also has a bunch of really good strats, people are like, oh, you need to take this one character who gives you CP generation in order to do it. But because they're all 1 CP, they're all good, but they're all situational. You end up going to turn 3 and 4 with a lot of CP still, because you've warned your opponent, this is what I can do, and so they take measures so that you don't do it, and then you don't have to even spend the CP on it. It's great.
Yeah, like just the threat of some of these, I feel, will make opponents double think themselves.
Absolutely.
A lot.
Especially the advance in charge. The threat of advance in charge means that the threat of fight on death means that people are going to act differently.
The threat of turning off the Overwatch might make them misstep and put more units out in the open than they should.
Sure. Yep.
I love it because it gives you so many potentials to make your opponent take the wrong step without you having to do anything.
Yep. All right. Now here's your last strat, the Dance Macabre. 2 CP, which is yours is 2 CP, mine's only 1 CP. And mine's Anyway, it's a reactive move.
Me sad.
Yeah.
It makes me sad. Because if this was 1 CP, it would be glorious.
Yes. This one should be 1 CP.
It should, because it's not even Phantasm, because Phantasm is at the end of the movement. Any infantry. This one already has a limitation of the enemy has to end within 9.
Yeah. No, this is squad tactics. This is, the Gladius reactive move. This is the reactive move that's like super common in the game, and everybody else it's 1 CP. And for some reason for you it's 2.
I think it's 2 because of if you're losing the wager, you can auto 6.
Yeah, but if you're with squad tactics, if you're in tactical doctrine, you can auto move 6 as well. And the other thing about this is if you're trying to just get back into transport, you don't even care. You make a move of 1, and if you're within 3, then you're getting back in the transport anyway.
Yes, but you're forgetting something very important. We're elves. We're not marines. So it costs us more.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's bizarre to me that this costs as much as Fire and Fade.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Now, if you told me it was a reactive move and it was an auto 6 like the old Phantasm,
sure,
I'd say, okay,
yeah,
I can see 2 CP for old Phantasm.
Yeah.
But this is worse than Phantasm.
Maybe if they wanted to incorporate the wager, what they could have done is they could have said that it's 1 CP if you're losing the wager, 2 CP if you're winning the wager.
That would be cooler. Absolutely.
But it's flat 6 across the board.
Yeah. That would be much better, honestly.
Yeah. And they could have done that, but they didn't. And so, now you just don't worry about this one. You're not going to use it most.
No.
I can't think of. There might be some situation. It's like round 5. It's bottom of round 5, and you're up by 4 points, and you have 2 CP, and you can somehow reactive move onto the objective so they can't score it. Then sure, spend the 2 CP then.
Yeah, it's such a specific point. And then again, it's competing with everything else.
Yeah.
In what situation would this be a better answer than spending those 2 CP on what we said of doing, for example, Frenzy and Fateful Roll together? Right.
Yeah, no. Well, the thing is, if this was your best strat at 2 CP, you would have bigger problems with the detachment.
Yes, for sure. And the one thing going into the strats in general, aside from the fact that they are ignoring the Danse Macabre, they're glorious. And the fact that they're 1 CP. But what I like is that none of them are sub-faction locked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because
that's true.
You've seen it with Real Space or with the others, everyone can do this except Coven, or
right,
only witches can advance and charge, which is something in Real Space Raider.
Yeah, it's harkening back. Those rules are harkening back to 9th edition.
Mm-hmm.
But 9th edition, you had dozens of strats anyway, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah. Not just dozens of strats, but you had dozens of sub-abilities, because in 9th you had every sub faction had kind of like its own detachment rule.
Right. Yeah. It was a mess. But and
It was a nightmare to remember.
So I think you did get a bit of Frankenstein, it's a bit of 9th, bit of 10th mixed in, and this is definitely better. And honestly, okay, so you have one dud strat, but you have 5 very good. I mean, I'd say you have
4.
Yeah, you have 4 that are.
You have 4 great. You have one that's okay, situational, and you have one that's just a wash.
Yeah, I think that you have 2 that are exceptional, 2 that are very good, 1 that's good, and 1 that's bad.
Yeah, which is already better than Sky Splinter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing here is if they kill your boats, you still have a detachment rule.
Yeah. Which I think that is in and of itself maybe the single greatest argument in favor of this detachment, because there's no like obvious way. I mean, even if it's like, oh well, I'll kill all of the Harlequins so that you're always losing the wager, who cares? Like and that's also a lot harder to do than I'm going to kill all your transports, because you're going to put your transports where I can kill them anyway.
Right. Or you'll inevitably get to the transports. And if they kill the Quins, it's like, oh, so I still just have my regular full rerolls to hit from pain tokens.
Yep.
Okay. Which is why I was telling you earlier, you can play this ignoring the detachment rule and it still works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because nothing is sub-faction locked. Everything can go to everyone. I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I was also, just trying to think of some other like weird combos, but I mean, there's so much that you can do. I actually really think that a fun one might be you have a solitaire and you give the solitaire the sustained hits, and now you just have a bajillion hits coming at some character in the backfield on the blitz turn.
Yeah.
And and one of the reasons why that strategy often didn't work is because of Overwatch,
which you can now
turn off.
Yeah, it's the other thing is it lets you do list ideas or combos that before you couldn't. Like I could again run a full Talos heavy if I wanted.
Yeah, seems perfectly. I definitely remember. I mean, obviously your lists were ever so slightly different than, what some people on the internet were playing. But by and large, once I got used to playing Drukhari, it was like, okay, well, just tell me what's different from the standard thing, because everybody, I mean, there's only one way to play, so what's your variation on it? Whereas this, you could run things that have not been seen this edition.
Yeah. Like I was telling you, Succubus is suddenly viable.
Yeah.
Or, Scari's favorite unit is still very good here. Because, again, you could give the Void Raven Bomber lethal hits or sustained.
Yeah, you could.
Which is just a horrible thought.
Yeah, right?
Right? Imagine those 12 shots, or I don't remember how many shots it is. 12 shots? I don't know how many, but with full rerolls and sustained.
Yeah, I know.
And if you're losing the wager, they get to reroll the ones to wound.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, I don't like running the bombers, but they are good. And I feel like the bomber would be amazing in this detachment.
I actually agree. I think that, I mean, well, you know me, I love planes, and
yes.
When they inadvertently allow planes to get really good buffs, they get nasty fast. I think that's a very good candidate for that strat. Absolutely.
Yeah. My main issue with planes is I like running MSU, and planes just puts a bit target on my back.
Sure.
Like, I see the value of them. I can play them. They do have uses for different strats. It's just not my style. But it would do great here.
Yeah.
And
no, you got to leave that to me.
Yeah, I'll leave the planes to you. Like, something fun you could do here, which I was building the list just because, and it's something that is so dumb but it could work. You could run an oops all boats. You could run 5 to 6 Venoms and run at least 3 Starweavers and have your whole army in Venoms and Starweavers and just jump out, do stuff, and jump back in.
Yep.
Is it good? Probably not. Is it hilarious? Absolutely, and I'm going to try it the next game I can.
So, I mean,
because it just sounds hilarious.
Anything is possible at this point. You'll have to report back with your test findings.
Absolutely, absolutely. You'll probably hear me cackling.
Yeah.
During a game, so yeah.
So your final assessment. I know that you're having fun with this, but in terms of the competitive scene, would you say that this is at least a viable alternative, or better, or how does it compare to the alternatives?
So here's the thing. I put it in a middle point between Real Space Raiders and Sky Splinter.
Mm-hmm.
Sky Splinter isn't extremely tactical, it's just very killy.
Sure.
As in, it has its things, but most of its strats are built towards, I'm going to kill you harder. Real Space Raider is a little more tactical, but less killy. A lot of the strats are built around doing actions and doing things and doing this and that. This one falls somewhere in the middle.
Sure.
It has the flexibility that you would see in Real Space, but not as much. But it doesn't have the kill factor that you see in Sky Splinter. It has the potential to make certain things very lethal, but it doesn't have the consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't have across-the-board lance, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Could this work competitively? Maybe if you're a tryhard.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to go full hog and find a way, you could. You could make this work. I have no doubt that you could make this work. You're just going to burn your brain out. Or you could make it work and just completely ignore the detachment rule, which is valid.
Yeah.
Can it work? Yes. Is it better than Sky Splinter? No, but I find it to be a very fun alternative. And better than Real Space.
I really hope somebody wins a GT or two with this.
Give me a month.
Well, you have till March. That's when the OPGT is.
Well, but then the Eldar Codex will drop.
That's true.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see what happens from here to March.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you for joining. This was very insightful. I was looking forward to this one. This detachment is hilarious. It
is. I love it, and I'm honestly glad to be here. I've been wanting to have this talk for a while because this detachment is just wild.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll have you on again to discuss the Eldar detachment. I don't think either of us are going to be quite as enthusiastic about it, but if not that, then maybe when the book comes out.
Probably when the book comes out, because the Eldar detachment, as it is right now, they gave us a car without an engine.
Yeah. So, I don't really feel like making a video about it.
Well, if people ask you for it, I'll gladly help you talk about it.
Sure. All right. Well, everybody, if you're still here watching, please like, comment, subscribe. Tell us how we don't know what we're talking about, and we are terrible at Warhammer, and we should never pick up our minis again.
Absolutely.
And until next time, thanks.